This is the Killer Innovations Podcast with Phil McKinney. Keep in mind that the information and opinions expressed in this podcast are Phil's, and Phil's alone, and they don't necessarily reflect those of his past, current, or future employers. Now, here's Phil McKinney.
Why is it so hard for people to pitch their ideas? To tell the story of their ideas in such a way that people just swarm them and they want to be part of it. They want to invest in it. But so few entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs being both startups, entrepreneurs inside of corporations needing to get their managers' approval, innovation teams trying to convince executives or outside investors to invest. The skill of the pitch is so hard to find. In fact, I can't tell you how many pitches I've had to sit through over my years, both at HP and now as a consultant outside of HP, where those pitches are just absolutely painful. I mean, painful to listen to. What I've found is that the types of pitches typically fall into two common buckets or categories. One is the person who's making the pitch believes that they can win you with facts. They know every obscure detail about the subject matter they're talking about. They clearly believe that they are the smartest person in the room. And if you disagree or want to challenge them on it, they take a belittling approach to the people in the room by trying to swarm them with the facts to prove that they are the smartest person in the room. The other is overwhelming with content. These are the people who make the pitches, come in with thick notebooks, 100-page PowerPoints, and they're going to grind you through all 100 PowerPoint slides. I'm not sure why. My guess is that they're hoping that you'll just yell uncle and give in and agree with them just to avoid needing to get through the last of the slides. I've even been in pitches where someone has agreed to go forward at slide 30, and the person still made everybody sit there and go through the other 70 slides to complete the pitch. So why is it so hard? Why is it that people just struggle with putting together a well-thought-out, well-structured pitch to convey your idea? The problem is that many people forget about the fact that decisions are personal. We may think decisions are made factually. You may think you're part of some large organization, and therefore the decision-making process is very structured. You cannot ignore that personal, emotional side to the decision-making process. We're all driven by our pasts. What's worked for us, our gut, the way we were raised, the school we went to, the people we hang out with, the current issues going on in our personal lives, all have an impact into the decision-making process. And so in doing the pitch, you have to create an emotional side of your story, not just the factual side, but you have to create an emotional side to your story to hook the listeners in for them to truly understand what your idea is about and why they should support it. The way I do this is a concept called strategic storytelling. Storytelling is critical in telling the pitch. Storytelling is about not sitting there and grinding through the facts and just giving them market share numbers and growth and, boring people to death with PowerPoint slides. Storytelling around a strategic pitch conveys three things. One is you define the problem in the form of a story. 2, you define the solution as part of a story. And 3, you place the people in that story, the person you're talking to, the persons that are in the room. The story that you tell is such a way that they can either place themselves in that story, meaning that's a problem that they personally have, or it's a problem that their family's experienced, a spouse, a child, a grandparent, or if it's a business story, they could see their own business in it, or they could see a friend's business experiencing that problem. Likewise, when you tell the story part of the solution, they can see them using that solution to solve that problem. It's that emotional hook, their ability to see themselves living in the problem space that you're defining and using the solution that you're proposing. Now, the way to structure this strategic storytelling is using the basic structure of a 3-act play. 3-act play is structured. This is what you typically see in movies. It's what you see on TV shows. The first act is really the setup. Act 1 is about setting up the location, defining the characters. In the case of characters, it could be individuals, it could be businesses, it could be governments. You have to lay the foundation. You start the storytelling by going through this process of the setup, giving people enough background and warming them up to understand that you're going into a storytelling process, and you tell it in such rich context that they actually start engaging in the storytelling. They can see themselves in it from the standpoint of participating in that story. Act 2, that's the confrontation. It's really the obstacle, the problem, the challenge that people are facing. In this Act 2, you describe the size, the scope, the impact of the problem. How big is the problem? You're using this act to really pull out the emotions. People get engaged from the standpoint of understanding how big and how impactful that markets are going to go away, or the environment is going to be destroyed, or competitors are going to blow past us in the marketplace. That second act is really defining that emotional. You're building up to a peak. You're building up to the climax. Act 3 is the resolution. You build up to that climax, to the problem, and you save the day with your solution. Solution comes in, you describe how the solution at some point in the future is going to solve these problems and take the problems away, or at least minimize those problems. What's more important in the resolution also is the ongoing role of the solution. It's not just about we solve the problem and you're done. It's about telling what's the role of the solution on a long-term basis. Where does this play out in a longer kind of a range of the future? Now, to kind of give you an idea of the balance between the 3 acts, if you think about it in the context of a movie, a typical 2-hour movie breaks down to be about 30 minutes in Act 1 in the setup phase. The confrontation, Act 2, is about an hour. And then the resolution, the ending, the climax, the solving of the problem, the wrapping up of the story is about 30 minutes. So again, you can think of it as about 25% in Act 1, 50% in Act 2, 25% in Act 3. Now, if you spend the time and really think about that kind of a structure, and you put it to not only to your presentations, but just talk. Don't use slides. Don't use lots of slides if you feel like you have to have some slides. Talk, engage, watch the process of telling the story and the impact. Now, what I have found over the years in my experience in creating these strategic storytelling processes is there are some basic rules. One is keep it short. Don't drone on for an hour. Typically about 20 minutes is a good time length for the story. Now, I'm a big believer in the Guy Kawasaki rule for presentations anyways, right? So 10, 20, 30. 10 slides, 20 minutes, nothing less than a 30-point font. Same applies here. Keep it short. If you've got a 1-hour meeting, don't plan on presenting for an hour. Don't make a pitch for an hour. Pitch for 20 minutes. If it takes you longer than 20 minutes to explain what it is you're doing and why you're doing it and the benefits and all of that, then you don't know your subject matter well enough. 2, tailor it to the people in the meeting. Don't go in there with a generic story. With access to all the information you can get on people through LinkedIn and online searches or whatever, you can find out a lot about the people who are going to be in the room. Tailor the story. Understand what they are going through. If you don't, understand what they might be going through. Understand a little bit of the context of what the challenges are in their industry. Tailor the story. 3, put emotion and passion into it. Don't make it sound like you're reading a script off of a piece of paper and you're saying it in a monotone voice. Put emotion and passion into it. Practice it. Make it such that it comes off as being a natural process of just telling, one, what's the setting the background. And you can do this in the context of what was it that caused you to even look at this problem space. Give the context of how you identified the problem even existed and tell it in such a way. Make it interesting. Don't make it some boring, you're going to, just read it off of a piece of paper. The fourth is understand the use of pausing and the tone of your voice to create tension and excitement. Just as I said, putting emotion and passion into it, understand the role of your voice in storytelling. Understand the role of your voice in being able to use a strategic pause, which creates tension in the room, and also the raising, lowering, loudness, softness of your voice to create tension. The next time you watch a movie, listen to the music background. When is the music loud? When is the music soft? When does the beat of the music speed up? When does the beat of the music slow down? You need to convey that in the tone of your voice when you're making the pitch. These are basically good storytelling practices in the use of pause and tone. So I'd actually encourage you to go out. There's some great books out there, some great videos on YouTube of people who are just phenomenal storytellers, and listen to them. Understand what it is, what's the trick that they're using. And I wouldn't say trick, but how is it they convey the story in such a way that you're right in there with them. The other rule that I've learned over the years is read the body language. If people are dozing off or rechecking their BlackBerries and they're not really listening to you, change it up. Put something in there that's going to get them engaged. Make eye contact. Move around the room. Don't sit in a chair. Don't stand in the front gripping, a clicker, flipping your PowerPoint slides. Walk around the room. Read the body language. Engage with the people who are responding with you, and others will engage also. The other rule is when you end your strategic story, end it with emphasis. End it in such a way that when you are done with your story and you stop talking, just end it on a pause. What you want is you want to let it sink into people's minds, but what you really want them to say is wow, I get it. I really understand what it is you're trying to do, and I want to be part of it. I either want to invest or I want to join your team, but you want to end it on emphasis. End it in such a way that you end and let a pause happen at the end and let it sink into people's minds. The reaction you're going for is that wow reaction. Now, in a future podcast, I'm actually going to go into a little bit more detail on this to give you some specifics. And in fact, if I have enough time, I'll actually sit down and go through and create a fake or a mock strategic storytelling around some fake idea or something, just to help convey to you what it is that I'm trying to convey here. You can never practice your pitch enough times. If you're out there doing pitches, have the guts to follow up with everybody in the room and ask them the simple question of, how can I improve my pitch? How can I improve conveying to people what it is we're trying to do? Were there things that were confusing? Were there things that were unclear? And when people say, oh, no, you were great, push back. People tend to want to be nice, but what you need in the process of creating your pitches, whether that's an internal pitch or an external pitch, is honest, unvarnished feedback. You don't improve unless you hear the honest truth. So if everybody says, oh, no, you did a great job, great pitch, great story, push back. You want that honest feedback. That's how you improve. So if you're out there doing pitches, follow up. 2, practice. Get out there and just practice. Record it. Listen back. Videotape yourself. Listen back. Go onto YouTube. Find great storytellers and see how they tell their stories. And then figure out ways that you can craft your story to have that same level of emotional feedback. As I said at the start of this podcast, you cannot ignore that emotional side of the decision-making process. We tend to want to think about decisions as being purely factual. It's not the case. The emotional side plays a role in all decision making. And storytelling is a way for you to tap into that emotional side, engage the listener, place them in the story, convey to them what it is about your idea that's valuable, explain to them the problem you're solving, explain how you solve the problem, and then close it with their emotions from the standpoint of getting them to commit to be part of your journey. If you can do that, you will be wildly successful. Thanks for listening to this week's podcast. If you have feedback, send it to feedback@philmckinney.com. The book, Beyond the Obvious, Killer Questions That Spark Game-Changing Innovation, is out and available at all of the traditional bookstores, but also all of the online stores, and in audio form. Now, I am in the middle of the book tour at the moment. I'll be in New York this week. I'll be in D.C. and Denver over the next 3 weeks. So if you're in one of those locations, then please follow along on the calendar at philmckinney.com so that you can keep up to where I'm going to be. If I'm going to be in your town, I'd love for you to come out, come to one of the book signings, come to one of my talks, and just stop by and say hi. I would really, truly appreciate it. If I'm not coming to your city or to your area, feel free to arrange a book signing. I can put you in contact with my publisher at Hyperion and see if there's enough interest in a country or city to be added on to the book tour that's coming up. So if I'm not coming to your area, feel free to propose one, put one together, and I'll do my best to see if I can come out and spend some time with you in your town or country if there's enough interest. So please let me know. Drop me an email at feedback@philmckinney.com. And again, thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule to listen to the podcast. As a way for me to pay this forward, this is why I do the podcast, as a way to pay back an early mentor. All I ask is that you pay it forward. Tell others about the podcast. Share the podcast with your coworkers, with your bosses. In some cases, people are sharing it with their spouses and kids. Help me spread the word and the availability of the podcast. There's now 145 shows in the catalog, and I truly do appreciate you taking the time and look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye-bye.